Hello, hello, cek cek, one two three. Hello guys, kembali lagi di channel gua Icip Cup, dan hari ini kita akan sekali lagi bermain Elden Ring tapi dengan plot twist, yaitu dimana setiap kali gua mati, gua bakalan ngerjain satu bab di buku Kanji basic, yang dimana itu adalah buku yang digunakan buat gua kuliah sastra Jepang. Oke, let's go, langsung saja ya teman-teman. Gue buka dulu Elden Ringnya. Oke, jadi kemarin gua nggak mati ya, nggak mati. Gue cuman mati 2 kali ya teman-teman. Dan ya, kita coba lihat untuk kali ini apakah gua akan mati lagi atau tidak. Let's go. Kita terakhir di sini ya teman-temannya. Kita ngalahin itu tapi mati gara-gara gua apa ya kemarin ya? Oh, dibunuh sama serigala nggak sih? Tapi kita berhasil ngebunuh si itunya, si mas-masnya. Pertama kita kemana dulu nih guys? Apa iya langsung lawan Gothic? Farming aja dulu guys. Sebenarnya gue ada tugas guys hari ini guys. Tapi demi kalian, demi viewer kesayangan gue main Elden. Kemana dulu ya? Langsung aja gak sih? Apa iya bisa bang? Farming dulu. Oh, kenapa kita nggak farming di sini aja guys? Di tempat yang sangat ngecit. Wahahaha. Supaya aku tidak akan mengerjakan tugasku. Bentar, gue sebenarnya nggak bisa ngeliat chat kalian. Nggak ada yang chatting tapi Wix, Jody. Jadi buat teman-teman yang nggak tahu, di sini ada cara gampang buat dapetin rune. Jadi cara nge-cheatnya tuh guys ya, kalau lu jalan ke sini ya dia bakalan spawn dan play easy 1k bro. Oh iya, langsung ngedrip nih. Emang kalau di sini ada bos ya? Siapa dah? Kali gue langsung kali. Oh, R3 nggak sih? Terus soalnya senjata gue masih ini coy. Sudah guna. Caranya gimana? Soalnya nggak ada senjata coy. Udah deh, kita kalahin aja. Kalau gue mati kita langsung ngerjain tugas, oke? Sekarang udah jam 12 bro. sih? Ya aduh, mau bagaimana lagi bang? Tuh ada di bawah sini. Ya nggak ada bang. Aduh, mau gimana lagi? Apa iya? Itu apa enggak? Coba itu situ. Nah, gitu lagi. Apaan sih? Garing banget. Ini apaan bang? Salah bang, salah bang. Bang, bang, bang. Jancuk. Ternyata masih ngomongin. Bro, drop something, be useful. Fuck off, man. Masa langsung lawan Gotrik sih? Nggak mau. Ini Gotrik berapa mainnya? Ini 20 ya? Udah deh, langsung aja. Biar kerja tugas coy. Tugasnya besok dikumpulin bang. Udah gitu masih ada lagi tugasnya. Ini kita ini level up. Oke. Bismillah.
Foul tarnished.
Terus kita
Insert.
fucking easy. Terus gue ngerjain tugasnya kapan? Gue kerja tugasnya kapan, bro? Gue kerja tugasnya kapan? Why Elden Ring so easy, man? Why Elden Ring so easy? What should I do?
Smoldering with thy meager flame, cower in fear of the night. The hands of the
Gue sedih deh jadinya.
brook
Dude, this
thee.
game became so fucking easy, man. Terlalu mudah, bro. Gue kerjain tugasnya kapan, guys?
You there? Come over here, would you? I would. It's tight. Oh, the guard, you breached. Yeah, you're just. You, the guard, you'll slip. Yeah, you're just. I pray.
Ini apaan? Oh, we could sort ahead. Yeah, I know that. Gue matinya kapan ya guys, kira-kira guys? Masa gue main terus sih? Shit, shit, shit. Fuck, fuck. Hampir banget cuy. It's fucking close, man. Apaan sih? I don't understand Elden Ring joke, man. Shut the fuck up, dude. Mana lu bangun? Oh iya, temnya. Oh shit. Can I? Is this better? Dex C. Ini emang Dexnya apa? Dexnya C juga cuy. This is stronger. This. Aja. Bacot. Buset, cok. Udah kuat banget. Oke, at least we die. Saatnya kerja tugas. Gimana ya? Ini bagus nggak? Kita keluar dulu dari Elden Ring nih guys ya. Gue sebenarnya pengen dengerin podcast dari dosen gue. Itu dia ceritanya tentang itu guys. Apa sih namanya? Suzume no Tojimari di kacamata antropologi. Jadi kita sambil dengerin tuh ya. Gimana dah? Bisa gak sih ini? Oke. Mungkin dibalik ya. Sama sih. Nope. Mana tadi Transformers? Wait, not that. Transform 90 derajat 90 derajat. Oke. Transition. Udah deh, ini aja. Oke guys. Yosh. Sasaku ikimashou kai. Not sponsor. Jadi kita mulai dari ini aja deh. Supaya sekalian belajar. Ini berapa ini? Oh ini udah 7. Kita masih di 26. Hai.じゃあ行きましょうかい。Oke, jadi kanji pertama itu adalah haru, guys. Ini ya di sini. Maaf ya kalau ada El Gatonya di sini. Mana sih? Ini watermark, guys. Gue miskin, maaf ya. Ini haru kan haru akusu 9 enggak deh. Kita itu nggak perlu ngikutin. Ini dia dari kanji 3, terus hito, baru hari. Dia itu haru Yasumi, kalau ditambah Yasumi Shunbun no hi Vernal Equinox naon eta teh. Oh ya suaranya kedengeran ya sih. Oh shit. Tomat nih. Oke. Halo, apakah suaraku kedengeran? Pasti kedengerannya. Ini haru, dia bacanya haru, dan kalau onyomi itu shun. Jadi ini shunbun, gua tahu apaan, gak tahu vernal equinox apaan. Seishun, wah ternyata pakai haru juga. Ini C-nya kanji apa deh, lupa. Natsu, berarti anak muda itu haru ya. Kita ikutin kaki katanya deh. Gimana? Natsu Reika. Oh, Reika itu cool summer. Dan Natsu Yasumi Aki atau autumn, dia itu bacanya ini ya guys ya. Ini tuh kanji api. Mungkin jatuh anjir. Ini autumn aki. Emang gitu ya? Nggak tahu deh. Lupakan apa yang gue bilang tadi. Ini api, aki, shubun, autumnal equinox apaan nggak tahu. Banshu. Oke, lanjut. Kanji selanjutnya adalah Fuyu. Fuyu, ada juga Danto, Mild Winter, dan Fuyu Yasumi. Ada Atsui, salah. Kayaknya ada dari Kanji Natsu deh di sini. Gak ada sih, cuman banyak mataharinya guys ya, artinya kalau Atsui dan Natsu. Itu dia ada Atsui, Atsusa, atau kayak rasa yang panas, dan Atsui itu kayak panas, gimana ya, intransitif dan transitif gak sih, nggak tahu deh. Dan Shochu Mimai a summer greeting card. What the fuck man, ini kanji apa, kenapa banyak banget? Kenapa aku masuk ke sejarah Jepang ya? Lah bedanya ini sama ini apa? Atsui dan Atsui. Oke. Sebenarnya sih kanji kalau misalkan lu belajar, kelihatan ini guys, maksudnya Atsui. Kanjinya gila nggak sih? Misal kanji tuh kalau lu belajar ya guys ya, kayak sebenarnya sih aman-aman aja. Kayak ini tuh bagiannya banyak banget yang udah lu pelajarin dari pelajaran sebelumnya, jadi kayak mereka tuh nyambung. Dan itu ngebuat susah kalau lu nggak belajar dari awal. Kayak ya semuanya kayak gitu sih, tapi kayak kanji itu tuh gampang dipelajarin kalau lu pinter belajar pola, dan belajar pola itu biasa disangkut pautkan dengan intelijensi. Kayak IQ tuh rata-rata di mereka di apa sih namanya, di asesmenkan dengan bagaimana seseorang bisa menentukan pola yang sama gitu, kayak pattern recognition kan. Dan kalau misalkan lu bisa mengrekognisi pola dari kanji satu dengan kanji lainnya, jadi lu bakalan gampang belajar kanji dan bahasa Jepang in general, karena mereka banyak banget polanya. Dan gue selama di sastra Jepang itu belajar cuman ya pola aja gitu. Oh iya, gue kan pengen dengerin Spotify juga ya. Dan mereka tuh ya gitu, pola semuanya. Kalau lu nggak jago pola ya lu gimana ya, nggak tahu juga sih, good luck with that. Bentar ya, login Spotify dulu. Fucking hell man, males ah. Ini kita dengerin sesuatu yang ada di sini aja. Podcastnya itu deh, siapa sih itu namanya? Oh iya, Healthy Gamer. Oh, nice.
Bagus nih, tapi mahal.
Diskon murah.
Belanja di Shopee.
Today, we're going to talk about why you should be ashamed of yourself. I know it sounds kind of weird, but one of the biggest problems in society today is that we've forgotten the value of shame. Let's remember that our human brains have evolved to experience all of these emotions, and therefore each of them serves a very important purpose. And it turns out that a lot of the problems that we struggle with today in our technologically overcharged society have to do with actually not feeling ashamed of ourselves. Hey, just a quick note. A lot of people will ask us, what do I do next? And that's why we built Dr. K's Guide. It's a comprehensive resource that distills over 20 years of my experience, both as a monk and as a psychiatrist. And it's designed in a way that's tailored to fit your needs. So if you're interested in better understanding your mind and taking control of your life, check out the link below. And so this is something that I first kind of ran into when I was playing Dark Souls. And I sucked at Dark Souls, and I sort of struggled, and then I went on the internet and I asked for help. And the answer that I got from everyone is, get good, right? I was like, hey, I'm struggling with this boss. The boss keeps owning me. Help me, bros. Help me, bros. And everyone was like, get good, noob. Get good. Get good. No one gave me any support. No one gave me any help. No one kind of cued in with me. They were just like, get good. And what I like about Dark Souls is that it's incredibly realistic. Because much like Dark Souls, in real life, you suck. I suck. We all suck. And the biggest problem, though, is that even if you suck today, it's not like you wake up tomorrow and you're better. Despite the fact that we struggle in a lot of different dimensions of our lives, it's not like we can develop some kind of energy or motivation to consistently fix our problems. And today we're going to talk about precisely how to do that. Because as it turns out, we as human beings have evolved circuits to help us fix our problems. And the most important thing that helps us grow as human beings is actually shame. So in order to understand this, we have to understand the evolutionary purpose of shame, right? Because shame hurts. It really sucks, and we really want to avoid it. If you go into a situation where you feel ashamed of yourself, chances are you will avoid feeling that shame at all costs. So yeah, one time I went to a grocery store and I accidentally said penis instead of weenus when I was checking out. So therefore, I can never go to the grocery store again. And I don't even know, that doesn't make any sense, but y'all know what I mean, right? So you do something stupid and then you can never go back there and talk to those people ever again because of how shamed you are. And it turns out that that's not a bug, it's a feature. So if we look at the evolutionary purpose of shame, let's go back 5,000 years, right? So back when everyone was using Nokia phones. And so we're a tribe of 150 or 200 humans. And let's say that there's some kind of celebration for some kind of harvest, all right? So I go to a party where there's someone that I'm crushing on, and everyone is dancing. And then what happens is I start dancing, and it turns out that I suck at dancing, and I feel ashamed of myself. And in steps some Chad who is good at dancing and starts dancing with my crush, and they are so graceful, and they are so awesome, and they are so sexy that, I feel even worse about myself. So I feel shame. And so then the question is, in that situation, when I've got 150 human beings in my tribe, what is the antidote to that shame? How do I make that shame go away? So when we have a fixed group of people and we cannot avoid those people or those circumstances, shame actually is what drives us towards personal growth. Because 6 months from now, there's going to be another Harvest Festival. And during that Harvest Festival, I will have the chance to dance. And so if I don't want to be ashamed at all future Harvest Festivals, I actually need to learn how to dance. And this is why psychologists actually call shame the master emotion. Shame is such a powerful emotion that, according to psychologists, it actually trumps all of the other emotions. It is the most OP emotion because it can overcome things like anger and fear and love. Shame is the most powerful emotion. And you may understand that if you're frustrated with yourself for being stuck in life. You're like, you get angry with yourself and like, tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm going to change. I'm going to go back to that grocery store and I'm going to say weenus instead of penis. And then as soon as you walk in, that shame overwhelms you. It kind of bubbles up and it's so strong that it completely deflates the anger. So shame is sort of a very powerful emotion. It also turns out that shame is the most powerful emotion at shaping our learning and personal growth. So if we sort of think about it, if you're a kid, hopefully you're not in this situation, but we can look at kids who were emotionally abused for the first 10 years of their life. And if you grew up in a situation where you were in an abusive household or toxic household, the way that your brain wires due to the shame that you felt will actually dictate the next 70 years of your life, right? So the lessons that shame teaches us are the lessons that we carry with us through our whole life. And this is why it takes sometimes months or years of practices like psychotherapy or healing or something like that to reverse the damage of shame. Now, here's the problem. If we grow up in a situation where we were made to feel shame, or later in life, let's say teenage years, we did something ourselves that made us feel ashamed of ourselves, we sort of feel that shame, and then some part of our brain wires, right? I'm a loser, I suck at dancing, I'm never going to be happy, I'm never going to be in a romantic relationship, whatever. We learn some kind of like neuroscientific sort of stuff. Our brain wires that way, and we carry it with us. And then the problem is that if we sort of think about, okay, so if shame is what wires our brain, and we wire in one way, and then we avoid shame for the rest of our life, if we avoid feeling that shame, what we're actually doing is losing the capacity to rewire, because shame is such a powerful instigator at sort of neuronal firing and wiring. The problem is that it's harder to harness shame for personal growth in today's world than it was 5,000 years ago. So let's look at another example. So let's say that I'm out with my tribe and we're all hunting, and someone else uses a bow and arrow and they sort of shoot a deer, and then I sort of I take my shot, I shoot a couple of arrows and I always miss. So in that situation, I feel ashamed of myself. Or maybe what happened is I did something sneaky. Maybe I stole from someone in the tribe, and then the whole tribe starts to ostracize me, and I feel ashamed of myself. So in those situations, when I feel that powerful shame, it hurts me a lot, right? And so then what my brain says is, okay, this is so painful that we never want to be in this situation again. We actually need to avoid shame. But in that society 5,000 years ago, I had certain physical restraints that made it impossible for me to retreat from the circumstances that induce shame. So if I steal from my tribe, people in my tribe, I still have to like live there because I can't survive on my own. So in order to fix that behavior and never steal again, the shame teaches me, hey, stealing is wrong, and if we steal again, we're really gonna be screwed. Or shame will teach me that, okay, if I suck at like shooting arrows, I need to go out and practice for a while so I no longer feel ashamed. In the constraints of our old society where we couldn't actually leave our circumstances, shame forced us to grow, right? And that's, if you kind of think about it, that's also a form of avoidance, because what are we really doing? Even if I grow and I get better at shooting arrows or I never steal again, I'm still avoiding the shame. The shame is not happening, right? Because I've become better as a human being. And this is the really tricky thing that we've got to understand. The more an emotion hurts you, the more important it is for your progress. So if you sort of think about, why would your body or brain punish you in the first place? It punishes you because it's really, really important for you to learn that lesson. And each emotion has its place. Anger helps us maintain our territory and boundaries. Sadness even helps us bond with other human beings. And the purpose of shame is to induce the right behavior. And so we sort of see this in parenting styles as well, which is like, okay, if you make a kid feel ashamed of themselves, they'll never behave that way again, or at least that's the goal. And so this is exactly what we're missing in today's world, because in today's world, we have a new way of avoiding shame, a way of avoiding shame that does not involve fixing the problem, and that is the internet, right? Because now, if I feel ashamed about something, I never have to go back to those people, right? If I feel mortified because I said penis instead of weenus at a grocery store, I can just go to a different grocery store, or I can use grocery delivery and I never have to interact with anyone. If I do something stupid in my class, it's really easy. I can just skip class and watch the videos, or I can even drop the class. So now what's happened is our society is structured in such a way where if we feel shame in a particular situation, we don't actually have to correct the behavior to avoid the shame. We can just avoid the situation entirely. This is exactly the problem that you run into if you don't know how to harness shame. You can start to progress in one way, but the moment that you get a setback, that shame is so painful that it causes you to abandon the endeavor altogether. So I'm going to learn how to play chess. And chess is fun. It's really cool. I really enjoy it. And I'm going to sign up for an amateur tournament. And in the first round of the amateur tournament, I get crushed by a kid who's half my age. I feel so ashamed of myself. Oh my God, I'm such an idiot that I abandoned chess altogether. And hey, maybe I'll learn how to play guitar. And then I go out with some friends and they say, hey, you know how to play guitar? Let's jam together. Let's have a jam session. And you show up and they're really good. And then you feel ashamed of yourself. Looks like guitar's out the window. And so this is what happens in our life is when we start to avoid all of the shame, which by the way is kind of weird, right? Because it's wired to do that. Our brain is wired to make us never feel shame again. But in the past, we had to fix those problems instead of abandoning them. But abandoning our problems is so much easier today, which is exactly how we end up feeling stuck. So if we want to fix this problem, I know it's kind of crazy, but what you really need to do is feel more shame. Stop running away from the shame, because the shame is exactly that nuclear energy that will lead to personal growth. Now, in order to do this, it's a little bit tricky, right? So I'm not saying that y'all should expose yourselves to people who chronically make you feel ashamed, right? I'm not saying go find someone who's toxic and just have them beat you up over and over and over again. What I'm saying is that if you have a situation in which you feel ashamed, do not retreat from the situation.
Sabar ya guys ya, gue bikin makan dulu guys. Gue sembunyiin dulu deh. Salah. Maaf ya guys, lama karena aku sedang memasak kuantang goreng. French fry. French fry. French fry. French fry. French fry. Ngedit ini ke part 2. Kayaknya gue bakalan live stream sampai subuh deh. Anjir coy, gue kebalik. Gimana sih ini cara baliknya? Transform. Waduh. Kayaknya kita mending jadi channel reaction deh.
But still avoid the shame. And you may say, that's kind of weird because if I'm in this situation, won't I feel ashamed of myself? No, this is exactly what shame is supposed to do. Shame is supposed to alter your behavior
Balik nggak sih?
so that when you are in that situation, you no longer have to feel ashamed about yourself. So if I go with my friends to the beach and I am embarrassed about my beach bod and I feel ashamed of myself and I leave my shirt on and I don't go into the water and stuff like that and I just kind of sit around all day, I feel ashamed and I say to myself, well, it looks like I'm never going to go to the beach again. On the contrary, what I want y'all to do is commit to repeating whatever made you feel shame within 30 days. So 30 days. So if you do something, or if you are in a situation where you feel ashamed of yourself, 30 days from now, you're going to do the same damn thing. You're going to go back to the beach in 30 days with those friends, without those friends, or whatever. Whatever the circumstances that makes you feel shamed. I lost in this amateur tournament. I'm going to sign up for another amateur tournament 30 days from now. So put your brain back in the situation in which it was evolved. You need to create those artificial constraints to re-expose yourself to that same situation. And now you've done something really cool because now you know that that shame is coming 30 days away. So this is when the fear of that shame will start to activate different circuits of your brain. Your brain will start to say, okay, it's time to actually fix this problem so that we don't feel shame because we're going to be there anyway, right? And this is a really powerful principle for behavioral change. And this is why we as human beings oftentimes force ourselves into bad situations. A ton of the people that I've worked with, patients, clients, even friends, who are getting married, for example, will get married a year from now, but they will commit to having a particular suit size or dress size that is 1 or 2 sizes smaller than what they're wearing right now. So they're sort of forcing themselves to have a wedding dress that may not fit them. And the shame of not being able to fit into your wedding dress actually motivates you to get into shape. And this is the key problem, is that we've stopped utilizing shame. So what I want y'all to do is pick whatever it is that makes you ashamed, and then try to pick a target 30 days from now where you are going to do that thing. And then ask yourself, okay, if I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do this 30 days from now, what can I do between now and then that would make me feel less ashamed about myself? What can I do between then and now that will help me get good and feel less of that shame? And harness that motivation, that fear of shame, because it hurts so much, to actually make progress towards your goals. And it turns out that Dark Souls had the answer all along. Because the first time that you go into a boss's arena and you get them down to 10% health, and then you end up losing, you're like, oh man, I got this. And then you run back into the arena, you zone in, and they two-shot you. And then you're like, wait, why did I do so well the first time? And then you go in the third time and fourth time, they three-shot you, four-shot you, and you're getting...
To be honest though, that's for Dark Souls. Gue belum pernah main Dark Souls, tapi tapi kayaknya di Dark Souls itu lebih susah deh. Jadi lebih susah buat farming. Jadi kalau misalkan di Elden Ring, kalau misalkan mau ngalahin bosnya, dia lebih gampang buat dikalahin gitu. Karena lu bisa farming dulu sebelum ngebunuh bosnya. Jadi kayak ada jalan keluar yang lebih gampang kalau Elden Ring sih. Mungkin Dark Souls bukan lebih susah.
And crushed. And how is it that you actually down the boss? You have to keep on zoning in. The problem in today's world is that feeling of shame is so powerful that we let it turn into a different kind of avoidance. Instead of avoiding the shame through growing, which is really what shame is designed for because we couldn't shape our circumstances, now we avoid shame through not growing. Now we avoid shame through retreat. And this is the problem, is unless you start harnessing shame, unless you start putting yourself in situations that you may feel ashamed, you will continue to run away from everything in your life. You will continue to run away from all kinds of difficulty. And that's no way to live life. So if you want to get good, be ashamed of yourself.
Setuju sih, setuju. Jadi lu kalau pengen gimana? Self confidence is not good. Self confidence itu sebenarnya bukan sesuatu yang lu mau kalau lu misalkan pengen jadi lebih jago. Bukan lebih jago, lebih berani ngomong di depan umum lah misal. Kalau misalkan lu pengen berani ngomong di depan umum, lu bukan ningkatin self confidence lu, tapi kapabilitas lu untuk berbicara di depan umum, kayak nambahin kosakata lu, nambahin materi yang lu pengen bicarakan gitu, semakin banyak, dan itu bukan ngebuat self confidence lu naik, tapi itu ngebuat kapabilitas lu untuk berbicara, skill lu bertambah, dan bisa aja lu dalam hati masih tetap malu-malu gitu, tapi lu pas lu naik, wah ternyata gue bisa ngomong kayak gini, ngomong kayak gitu, karena ya itu tadi, lu punya banyak cerita, lu punya banyak kosakata dan lain-lain. Jadi kayak yang ngebuat orang jago itu bukan self confidence-nya, tapi bagaimana dia udah ngemasterin sesuatu dalam berbagai latihan. Dan kayak ya gitu sih. Kalau misalkan gimana? Mungkin self confidence dibutuhin untuk beberapa saat. Tapi bisa aja orang yang nggak punya self confidence, dia naik dan malu dan akhirnya retreat, tapi dia mengatakan ke dirinya sendiri, nggak boleh kayak gini, harus latihan lagi, nggak boleh malu gitu. Bukan nggak boleh malu, gunakan malu lu sebagai alasan kenapa lu mau melakukan itu lagi gitu. Dan bukan karena self confidence ya, karena emang lu pengen aja jadi jago gitu. Itulah. Apa yang mau saya nonton? How to change your personality. Interesting.
Are you sick of flipping pages to learn anatomy? Are you bored of uninspired?
Today, we're going to talk about how to become a different person. So a lot of people that I talk to fantasize about wanting a life transplant, right? So you wish that someone would come in and pluck you out of your current life and drop you into a different life, or you have tons of money and lots of people who love you. We wish we could kind of do a life transplant. But even more people that I talk to wish that you could transplant someone else into your life. Because if you were actually a different person, if your personality was different, if you were more resilient, if you were more excited, then your life could be so different. If a better version of you was actually living your life, then your life could be completely transformed. And that may sound crazy, that may sound impossible, but we are actually going to teach you how to do that. And it turns out that we actually have evidence-based techniques that do precisely that. So before we get started, we really have to understand, what is personality? And a lot of people may think like, oh, personality is just who I am and it's fixed. That's actually not true. We scientifically know what personality is, and personality has 3 components. The first aspect of personality is the way that we interpret
untuk menjustifikasikan gue begadang hari ini adalah gue pengen ngerjain tugas. Jadi bukan berarti gue pengen hidupin hidup yang gak sehat ya guys ya. Ini sekali dalam beberapa hari.
information. The second is the way that we react to circumstances. And the third aspect of personality is the way that we behave. So if you sort of think about 2 different people with 2 different personalities, and we put them in the same scenario, their reactions will be different, right? So if I have two different people who have two different personalities and they both get dumped by their significant other, their personality will determine how they behave in that situation. So one person may interpret the breakup as, I am insufficient as a human being, whereas another person may interpret that breakup as, we just grew into different human beings and we're no longer compatible. It says nothing about me and being insufficient. And this is something that I sort of learned working as an addiction psychiatrist. And when you work as an addiction psychiatrist, you deal a lot with something called personality disorders. These are things like sociopathy or narcissism. And so if we look at people who are narcissistic, we can see how they interpret and react to situations in ways that are different from normal people, right? So the thing about a narcissist is everything is about them. So even if I win first place in a chess competition, the narcissist is like, I can't believe you did that. You made me look so bad. I got second place, and I can't believe you would do something so hurtful as get first place in this competition that I was competing in. They take these ordinary circumstances and they interpret them as a personal attack. And then what happens is that the narcissist, it's not just that they feel that way, right? They also behave in a certain way. So then what they do is they go and talk to you about it and make you feel guilty for hurting them in some way.
Jadi tadi gue habis beli ini Coca-Cola Zero, dan gue mikir kayak ini dia ngomong zero sugar tapi kok rasanya manis, dan ternyata mereka pakai gula, bukan gula sih, pemanis sintetik yang bukan gula gitu. Dan gue mikir anjir kayak what the fuck bro, sama aja gak sih ngebuat orang diabetes. Orang tuh gak mau minum Coca-Cola karena mereka itu manis, dan manis itu ngebuat lu diabetes kan. But like it's the same shit man, what the fuck. Dan ini gue pengen minum teh botol less sugar. Yang gue heranin kenapa di setiap minuman itu ada garam ya. I don't know. Sorry ya guys, gue anak sastra Jepang dan gue gak tahu sama sekali tentang komposisi makanan. Ya kita lanjut.
So they change their behavior and they start to do manipulative stuff. And then if you sort of think about it, why would a narcissist want to make you feel guilty? Because ideally what they want you to do is apologize for
Enak anjir. Oh ya. Di sini nggak ada sih, tapi rata-rata tuh ya guys ya, kalau bukan minuman yang bersoda kayak kopi misalkan Nescafe tuh ada, rata-rata minuman itu mereka ada tulisan di sini kocok sebelum diminum. Dan cuman satu daripada produk yang ada di Indonesia itu yang make label itu yang kayak digedein gitu, karena mereka kalau nggak dikocok nggak bakalan kerasa bulirnya. Itu apa sih itu namanya, minute pulpy iya. Tapi rata-rata minuman itu harus dikocok dulu guys, jadi sebelum kalian minum biar enak kocok.
winning first place and hurting their feelings. And then that'll make them feel better, right? So I got second place and you hurt me, but if I can get you to apologize, then I will feel better about myself. Hey y'all, I want to take a moment to talk about HG groups. Our group coaching experience here at Healthy Gamer is designed to help people with the problems of the digital age. Problems like social isolation, a lack of purpose, or simply feeling overwhelmed. Groups are a place that will help you learn the skills that are necessary for success that aren't really taught anywhere else. Skills like how to be an effective listener and communicate effectively. Skills like how to be vulnerable so that you can allow yourself to authentically connect with another human being. Skills like cultivating self-awareness so you understand where your motivation comes from, but also where self-sabotaging behavior comes from. And so if y'all are interested in learning more about groups and interested in learning a little bit about how you can develop competence and confidence to move forward in life, check out the link in the description below. And so this sounds kind of weird, but then like, okay, so if that's the case, how do we change that? And so in psychiatry, what we did is develop evidence-based techniques to treat people who have severe personality defects. So we developed certain kinds of treatments like dialectical behavioral therapy, for example, treats people who have borderline personality disorder. There are other kinds of therapies that we've developed for people with antisocial personality disorder. Those are people like sociopaths. People who have dependent personality disorder. These are people who tend to be like really dependent on others. And the cool thing is that eventually we got together and we put together all of this research on all of these specific therapies to fix these particular personality problems. And then a group of researchers got together and asked themselves, okay, what's the common element between all of these therapies? What do all of these therapies share? What's the fundamental that allows us to change anyone's personality? And they settled on two major factors, metacognition and meta-emotion. And so what metacognition is the way that we think about our thoughts. And what meta-emotion is the way that we feel about our emotions. So I'll give you all just a simple example of meta-emotion. So sometimes I will go to a party and I will feel socially anxious. Oh my God, I'm so anxious, I'm afraid. And then after scrolling through my cell phone, on the side for half an hour, the social anxiety gets too high and I decide to leave because no one's talking to me. And that's not where it ends though, right? Because once I leave the party, then
Kayaknya gue tau deh ini ngarah kemana. Kalau nggak salah ada videonya juga, dia cerita tentang apa tuh, kenapa anak pinter dia rata-rata depresi. Karena dia tuh mikirin kalau diri mereka ya emang sesuai logikanya bodoh. Dan itu metacognition kayaknya gitu deh. Jadi kayak pokoknya jadi kayak gimana ya, dia tuh mikirin, dia membenarkan pemikirannya dia, pemikiran yang seharusnya tidak benar gitu ya. Dan mungkin aja benar, tapi ya who the fuck cares.
And it's not just the anxiety that I dealt with, it's the way that I feel about being so anxious in the first place. I get angry with myself, I feel ashamed with myself, I start to fear the fear, right? Oh my God, this fear is out of control, this anxiety is out of control. I feel anxious about being anxious. And if you really look at what screws you in life, it's not the anxiety, it's all the crap that happens to you when you feel anxious. You start getting anxious about feeling anxious. You beat yourself up. So if I actually beat myself up for being anxious in the first place, and I get anxious about my anxiety, what do you think will happen the next time I go to a party? It's not just the social anxiety that I'm dealing with. It's my meta emotion that actually cripples me and screws me in the future. And this is the key thing that these researchers discovered. It's not the thoughts themselves or the circumstances or even the emotions. It's the way that we react to those thoughts, emotions, and circumstances that actually determines our destiny. And so we really need to understand what metacognition is. And as you start understanding metacognition and meta-emotion, you will actually be able to change your personality. And the real tragedy here is that if you think about how you go about trying to improve your life, what you actually do is try to control the circumstances of your life, right? You try to focus on particular events. I want to get a job. I don't want to be alone anymore. I don't want this person to break up with me. And what we actually don't control at all is the conclusions that we draw from what happens in real life. Literally, the only thing that you can control in your life is the stuff in here. We can't actually control whether someone promotes me or doesn't promote me, breaks up with me or doesn't break up with me. But that's actually where we spend all of our cognitive energy. And this is exactly why we end up stuck in life, because we put all of our energy into fixing things out there, because that's really what we want, right? I want to get promoted. I want to get married. I want all of these things, and that's where we put our energy. But the real tragedy is that we don't actually pay attention to how those events affect us up here. And it's the way that we are up here, it's our personality that actually determines our destiny. So let's say that I get dumped by someone. When I get dumped by someone, I will try to avoid that, I will try to repair that, and I'll spend a lot of energy trying to repair the relationship. But what I actually completely ignore is the conclusions that I draw about myself up here, right? So when you get dumped, you're like, oh my God, I've gotten dumped. How do I get this person? I'm going to be alone. I'm not worthy. Oh my God, all this stuff is going on. Those are the thoughts that we actually assume is true. We let the conclusions from the crappy stuff that happens to us in life go completely unchecked, right? So if you get a B on a test, your mind forms all kinds of conclusions about who you are. And if you stop and really think about it, you can't control what another human being does, but literally the only thing that you have some degree or even complete control over is the conclusions that you form from an experience. No one else gets to determine your conclusions about your life and your experience for you. So we go through life automatically forming reflexive conclusions about who we are. And as we form those conclusions, those will change the way that we interpret information. They will change the way that we react to circumstances, and they will change the way that we behave. Okay, this person didn't text me for 2 days. Well, how do we interpret that information? Well, that depends. Am I a loser? Am I not a loser? Because if I conclude earlier in life that I am a loser, that becomes a facet of my personality, right? And then we go through life thinking, I am a loser. And so if I go through life thinking I'm a loser and someone doesn't text me for 2 days, the meaning of that text, not texting for 2 days, changes. This person doesn't text me because I'm a loser. But you all see how, like, me being a loser is completely independent from whether they text me or not. There are 1,000 different reasons why someone may not text me for 2 days. But it's the way that I interpret that information. It's the personality of being a loser that ultimately determines how I react to that. And then the problem is that if I'm letting loser run the ship up here, this is a metacognition that I have, right? Because it's not an actual thought. It is a thought about my experience in life. I am a loser. Then that feeling of I'm a loser will change the way that I behave and react to that person. Either I'll try to give them something. Hey, by the way, you haven't texted me in 2 days, so let me win over your affection because I'm a loser and I have to, like, give you something materialistically to get affection from you. And then what does that do for my life, right? That will determine that the people I end up spending time with are the people that become dependent on my materialistic or financial support or gifts. Because that's what you have to do if you're a loser, right? You let people walk all over you unless you keep on giving them gifts and all this other kind of crap, or you give them the gift of helping them feel good about themselves by making yourself small and boosting their ego. You do all kinds of unhealthy behaviors, and this is going to determine your life. Then you wake up one day and you wish you had a life transplant because you've surrounded yourself with people who you have to go the extra mile for instead of them creating a reciprocal relationship. And where did all of that start? It started with the conclusion that you're a loser. And then if we sort of think about where did that conclusion come from, it came from events, right? That's what you'll say. You'll say, well, these 3 things happened and this is how I determined I'm a loser. But hold on a second, because it's that determination that is the metacognition. When those 3 events happen, there are different ways to interpret those events, right? Bad luck or bad circumstances, or maybe the reason you don't have friends is because your parents literally did not teach you how to make friends. Maybe the reason that you don't have friends is because you were part of a cultural group growing up, and so all of your friends were sort of thrust in front of you. You were an Indian kid hanging out with a bunch of Indian kids, and then when you moved off to college, then you didn't have the skills necessary to make new friends. But that's never the way that we interpret it, because we interpret it automatically.
Kayak I don't really get life because like banyak banget yang kayak penelitian psikologi tuh yang mengatakan bahwa semua alasan kenapa orang seperti ini dan seperti itu dan itu rata-rata negatif itu karena mereka dari kecil kayak gitu. And like yo, terus gimana orang-orang yang unlucky aja gitu yang dapat gacanya? Kasian, mereka dapat di keluarga yang broken home. Tapi kayak gue juga ngerasa sih orang-orang yang broken home gak selamanya dia menjadi orang yang terkena mental illness yang sangat kuat, tapi kemungkinan besar untuk mereka terkena mental illness karena keluarganya nggak lengkap. Kemungkinan besar dia bakalan kena mental illness karena keluarganya nggak lengkap gitu kan. Jadi like what the fuck should I do? What? Dan kalau kita melihat dari sisi teologinya, ya Tuhan ngasih lu cobaan aja gak sih? But still kayak kita tuh harus banyak mikir tentang hal itu. Dan kasihan juga, tapi kita gak bisa ngapa-ngapain gitu, kecuali kalau dia pengen berusaha. Dan I wish luck for everybody Terus like pas mereka kecil mereka sengsara gitu. Dan gue juga merasa sih kalau pas gue kecil itu nggak punya teman dan lain-lain. Dan serius itu ngebuat gue ngerasa di zaman sekarang, bukan zaman sekarang sih, di usia sekarang gue susah banget bergaul dengan teman. Kalau gue berada di tengah-tengah teman gue nggak bakalan ngerasa seneng gitu. Tapi ya I still have friends and they're good ones. Jadi try your best guys, karena bakalan worth it sih.
And so it is when our metacognitions, the conclusions that we draw from life, run rampant that we start to lose control of our life. And the good news is that you can actually change all that. As you start to shape your metacognitions and meta emotions, literally your personality will change. As you start to change the way that you interpret information, react to circumstances, and behave, then your personality will change. And then as your personality changes, you will literally wake up as a different person. And we know this because we've done this scientifically with like literally millions of people. We've taken tons and tons of narcissists and gone through this painstaking process of metacognitive changes, which is how they no longer become narcissists. And we can actually do that. And so now the question becomes, how do I actually go about changing my metacognitions? And so there's one really key place that we're going to start, which is observe and be careful about the conclusions that you draw from the experiences in your life. So if you go do something, let's say I apply for a job or I ask someone out on a date, you'll notice two things. The first is that you will feel some amount of reaction, which is completely automatic, right? So like you feel hurt and you feel rejected. But if you're not careful, you'll notice that that emotional and hurt and rejection, which will disappear over time, will actually transform without your knowledge into a conclusion. And that's the step that we need to stop. So what I want you all to really do is pay attention to the conclusions that you draw, and your mind will give you all of this evidence, right? And so you will feel like that is an appropriate conclusion. But a lot of times the evidence that it actually presents to you is shaped by all kinds of emotions. Because if you really stop and think about it, the conclusions that you draw about yourself are formed based on evidence that you collect when you are highly emotional. The evidence that you actually collect is not objective at all. And so then the conclusions that we draw are by definition not objective. In the Buddhist tradition, there's this concept of the two arrows. And what the Buddhists believe is that we get hit by two arrows in life. The first is the arrow that life shoots at us, which we can't avoid. And the second is the arrow that we shoot at ourselves for getting hit by the first. I get angry at myself for losing my temper. And one of those things we can control, and the second one we can't. And this is what was really confusing for me, because when I was studying like psychiatry, I went back and I looked at all these yogic and Buddhist texts, and like, where's all the psychology here? Like, where's all the information about anger and trauma? Like, none of that stuff is in the yogic texts. And the reason for that is because the yogis actually figured out that you don't need to fix a particular problem. What the yogis actually focused on was metacognition. So when they have all of these practices like meditation, they just transcend mind and they don't care about the content of what's going on in your mind. And that's why Patanjali's Yoga Sutras doesn't have any information about particular traumas. Instead, what these old yogic texts have is this sort of exploration of how do you move past cognition entirely and start working at the level of metacognition. Because when you start meditating and when you start looking at working at the level of metacognition, whatever is in your mind will get solved. And we see good evidence for this, that a lot of people who start to practice meditation, they'll say that all dimensions of my life are better. And it's like, wait, hold on a second. How is it that sitting there and observing your mind makes your relationships better, makes your work ethic better, makes you more productive? Like, how does that work? And that's because the yogis are working at the level of metacognition. So if you want to change your personality, it turns out that you actually can. And the main thing that you need to focus on is, instead of trying to fix your life, fix the way that you interpret and draw conclusions from life events. Pay a lot of attention to that, because the real tragedy of life is that we spend a lot of energy trying to fix things that involve other people, which means fundamentally they're not completely, but at least partially out of our control. And then what we end up doing is we ignore all of the conclusions that we draw about ourselves. We don't think about it. We don't work on it. We don't craft the conclusions that we have about ourselves. And so those things develop automatically, and then they determine our personality. And once they determine your personality, then they'll determine the way that literally interactions get interpreted by your brain. They'll determine your emotional reactions to situations. And most importantly, they'll control the way that you behave. So if you want to forge a different destiny, you need to become a different person. The good news is that that's actually a lot easier, or at least more possible than we realize.
Still don't get the conclusion though. Just do what you do. Oh, banyak banget coy. Akhirnya main aja dah. Apa lagi ya? The Fall of Man. What the fuck?
Hello, sir.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Alok. I'm known as Dr. K.
Olok.
Yeah. What do you go
Okay,
by?
perfect. Well, my name's Dantes.
Okay. And
Yeah.
And so I don't know exactly what we're going to be talking about today, but just to make sure we're clear, I'm not your psychiatrist. I'm not going to be diagnosing you or treating you for anything. But I'd
Yep.
love to have a conversation with you about whatever the hell you want to talk about.
All right, perfect.
What do you want to talk about today?
So I feel like for a very long time, I've had like problems with insecurity
Okay.
where I always feel like no matter what I do, it's never enough. And no matter like how much I'll grow or how much I'll invest my time into like my grinds or my goals or whatever it might be, that not only is it never enough, but that it will also never be enough for anyone. And because of that, it's always been a thing where I'll like always push myself to like my literal limit, because I'll view, I guess, like my body as just like a way for me to like grow and to progress my goals. So that's why I always like push myself past my boundaries and all these things, because it's almost like the only thing that really matters to me is achieving something.
Okay. So it sounds like your body is a vehicle or a tool for your
Yep.
ambitions.
Exactly.
And what are your
Just like in every sense of the word, like let's say when it comes to the gym, right? It's like to get the best body that I can possibly have. When it comes to streaming, to become the best streamer I can possibly be. When it comes to my game, becoming the best player that I can possibly be. And it's just to like literally become the best at everything.
Okay. Okay. Give me 1 second. I just realized I may need my iPad.
Yep.
Okay. Because we're going to map some things out for you.
All right.
And okay, so best at everything you do. So tell me what game do you play? Or games?
League of Legends.
Oh, damn. Okay. So
Yeah.
yeah. And how's that going?
I mean, it's good. Like, I'm a consistently challenger player, which is the highest rank. My goal is to get like the literal highest rank, which would be rank 1. So that's why every so often I'll have like coaches come to my stream who will like kind of teach me more things about the game. And then I'll also like play like 12 hours a day, stream like 12 to 13 hours a day, just to, like grind as much as I possibly can to improve.
Okay. And why do you want to be the best?
I don't know. It's just one of those things where I guess it was because when I was younger, I grew up as kind of like the fat kid, right? And I remember I was also like, there was also a time where I first started playing the game, and back then I used to be like the lowest rank, right? So it was bronze. And as time went on, and I noticed that I guess like my physique would improve or my rank would improve, that it would seem that more people would, I guess, want to interact with me, more people would want to be, I guess, like friendlier with me. So then it just got to a point where I kind of found it synonymous with like growth, and then also like people's perception of you also becoming better, if that makes sense. So then it just always made it so I was like, well, if I don't necessarily interact with all these people, and instead I just keep focusing on growing and growing and growing, then I guess not really in like a revenge way that you take away your ability to interact with them, which is what they want in pursuit of like your goals and other things, but just more so of a thing where you always make yourself the priority.
Okay. So I'm hearing. Can I think for a second?
Yeah.
You're very good with words. You're very insightful. I'm guessing you've thought a lot about this.
Yeah, because so back in the day, whenever I would end my streams, what I would do is I would just sit there and I would do introspection for like hours every day. So I would have a thought, like let's say I thought like an apple, right? And I would think like, what is my reaction to the word apple? And then let's say it was negative, then I would think of like all the individual constituents of like what an apple is, right? So like its color, its shape, its size, its taste. And then I would try to think back to all my, I guess, interactions with everything in the past that could have led me to having that negative perception of an apple now, right? So I would always do this for like hours every night until I got to a point where I'd become very, I guess, not really knowledgeable about myself, but just more so have a very in-depth understanding of like why I am the way I am.
Bro, that is fascinating.
Thanks.
Can I just process for a second?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So many questions. Okay, hold on a second. Give me a sec. Because you're so introspective. It's interesting
Yeah.
because just in your opening statements, there's like so much there. So I'm just trying to organize like how we're gonna understand what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me start with this. So you said you used to do this every day. How this
what do you
like
mean by-
thinking for hours every night, you said.
Yeah.
How long were you doing that?
Years. Because so it started when I was 16. Because
Okay.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with Destiny.
Yeah?
So at the
Like
time I would
the
watch a lot
concept
of
or the creator?
the creator.
Okay, both.
Yeah. Okay. So it's because at the time I used to watch him a lot. And one of his big things is like understanding why you hold the views that you have. So every night, what I would do is I would listen to like 3 to 4 hours of his debates. And after listening to his debates, I would just kind of like ask myself, what do I think about the things he's debating? And then I'd try to understand why I've come to those like beliefs. So I was just trying to find out all like my foundational beliefs for the views that I had. And then afterwards, when I had like more time, I guess like becoming a content creator, that's when I translated that. And instead of just understanding my beliefs, I tried using that, but for my views instead. So like my views on everything, my views on life in general, on like relationships, friendships, stuff like that. And then that's how I just kind of got that like understanding.
Okay. And can you tell me a little bit about your views on life?
In what sense?
What are you doing here, bro?
I don't know. I mean, that's the weird thing. It's just one of those things where, so I kind of view life as a video game, right?
Okay.
And I view myself as like a video game character where, let's say right now I'm like level 21 and I have all these stats like strength, intelligence, speed, right? And my only goal is to make it so that I can upgrade my character as much as I possibly can. So that's one of the reasons why I'll like play League as much as I do, or I'll sit there and I'll like work out as much as I do, is because every time I work out, I view it as like I'm upgrading my strength, right? Every time I play League, I view it as like I'm upgrading my gameplay, my intelligence. And I just want to kind of like max out my stats.
Okay. So, awesome, man. Okay. And you mentioned that you grew up as a fat kid.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Bro, he's
So,
And
okay.
actually, quick question. So
Yeah.
you're sure you're using your headset mic, right?
Let me just make sure with Discord. Hold on. Voice and video.
Dude, this is going to be great. I'm so excited.
Yeah, everything should be good.
Okay.
It says headset mic. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. So, my upbringing was a little bit weird because I grew up on a boat. So, when I was 5, my parents had taken me out of school for 2 years, and we had lived on a boat for 2 years, and we were just kind of like sailing the Caribbean. And it was there that, I mean, I never really viewed my weight as any kind of thing, but I did gain a bit of weight like there. But then it was kind of like when I got back that I was, not that I was like super obese, right? But I remember being in grade school and having people ask like, oh guys, how much do you weigh? And then you'd have a kid that would say 70. And then another kid would be like, oh, I weigh 60, right? And then I would sit there and like lie because I knew that my weight was the only one in the triple digits. So instead of saying 100, I'd sit there and I'd say like, oh yeah, like I'm 90, you know? So my weight was always something that I was like a bit insecure about. And it was like that for a few years until when I was 15. I remember that there was this time where I had just sat there and been like, I want to make a change, just like for attention or whatever else it might be, like just have a better body in general, have a better view of myself. So that's when I was 15, and I know it was like bad, but at the time I had starved myself for a few months, and then I had went vegetarian for a few months. And then after that is when I started like my weightlifting journey.
So when you said that you wanted a better, so when you were 15, you decided you want a better view of yourself.
Yep.
What was your view of yourself when you were 15?
Well, it was just one of those things where, like, my high school experience, right? I wasn't the popular kid. Like, people knew me, but they knew me as, like, the weird kid that would ask weird questions, right?
What kind
so
of questions
I would never
would
be
you
a...
ask?
What?
What kind of questions would you ask?
Oh, well, so, so for example, right? We'd be in, like, a science class, and then the teacher would talk about, like, let's say how as you age, your DNA like shortens, and that's the reason why like people die. So I would ask the kind of question where I'd say, if you were to like in game make a weapon of mass destruction where you could like shorten people's DNA with like electromagnetic frequencies, could that be a possible weapon, you know? And they would always like look at me kind of weird. But it was just like, that's the way my mind worked. Like I would always kind of like think of the absolute extremes of everything and then try to like really figure out stuff.
And how did people respond to you when you were trying to figure out stuff?
They would laugh a lot of the time. Like they would sit there, they would be like, oh, here he is asking his dumb questions again, and things like that. But my mom was always like super supportive of it because she would always tell me how like there was one guy when she was in high school who everyone thought would always ask the dumbest questions, but then he grew up to be like a neurosurgeon, making more than all of them. So she was always like, if you're curious about everything, just like always ask, always inquire, never like hold yourself back, and whatever others might think is dumb, just like you like if it's pertinent to you, then you understand that, right?
Yeah, okay. So it sounds like your mom was supportive of you asking dumb questions.
Yeah.
And can you tell me a little bit more about your mom?
My mom, very, very driven. She would always like, she has, because my mom and dad, they're still together. And she like worked as a police officer. And even working like full time, she would still always like cook meals at home for me and my brother. So I grew up with like a very kind of like normal family. Like there was never really any issues, never really any problems. Obviously we'd have like our arguments. My mom was always more of like the stubborn parent, whereas my dad was the more like laid back one. So there'd be that, but it was like a very normal upbringing.
Okay. And can you tell me a little bit about your dad?
Yeah, so my dad, we have a very close relationship too. I view both my parents as like friends. So me and him like will watch shows together. He also worked as a police officer for like years. That's how he had met my mom. And yeah, he's a very like, very as well, like kind of driven guy. He would always do humanitarian missions like in Rwanda or Haiti as a
Wow.
peacekeeper. So it would be like a lot of stuff like that.
Okay. Wow, dude. And how did y'all end up on a boat for 2 years?
So it was because when my dad had met my mom, they had made this for some reason. I think it was like my dad had let my mom in on his idea, and then my mom kind of was like, okay, where he had always wanted to like go on an adventure and live on a boat. So when we were in kindergarten, or when I was in kindergarten and my brother was in second grade, that's where my parents said, you know, it's now or never. So my dad took his early retirement. He was in his early 40s. No, I think late 40s, because he turned 50 on the boat. So he was in his late 40s, so he took an early retirement. And then we took out a second mortgage on the house, and we rented it out for that year. And then he bought a boat, and we sailed for 2 years from Florida to Grenada.
And how old were you when that happened?
I was 5.
What was that like for you?
So it was an extreme, like, I mean, it's not the kind of experience you'd ever like have normally at that age, right? So for me, it was very cool because I was able to experience many different cultures. I was able to experience many different like walks of life. Like I would visit some cities or some places, and you know there would be some kids who wouldn't even have shoes, right? And so I was exposed to like a lot of these things and a lot of these like kind of like concepts at that age. But the one thing that it also introduced me to was the sense that everything was like temporary. Because normally when you're a kid, right, you'll have like your friends and then you'll have your school. And every day it's the same kind of routine, the same kind of like environment. But when you're living on a boat, it's a bit different. Because what happens is that you'll be there and you'll make a friend with a guy and you'll become best friends with this guy, right? And you'll sit there and he'll be your best friend for like 2 weeks. And then after that, you'll never see him again. So you kind of need to come to terms with the fact that not everything is permanent at a very young age.
I'm going to need a second to think.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? That life is temporary.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say life is temporary so much. I would say that everything that you do is temporary. And I kind of like that idea in the sense that it means that you always have the capability for growth or change. But at the same time, the one kind of thing about it, and I guess this is the issue that I have like with relationships, is that it makes you view everything as temporary. So then you always need to be constantly improving. Because if everything's changing and you're staying the same, then everyone else is improving around you, you're not. So then there's a high chance that you get left, if that makes sense.
And what? Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So it's almost like an endless competition.
Yeah.
Or like a race.
Exactly. Yeah.
And help me understand what happens for the people who win. What do you get?
Well, I mean, ideally for me, right? One day it would be that you have like a family, that you would have kids, right? You'd have a very nice circle around you, stuff like that.
This dude is so fucking traditional, dude. Like,
What about League of Legends or physical, chadness?
Oh, so like that. Okay, I thought you meant like the absolute end goal.
Yeah,
So,
I did mean the absolute end goal.
Yeah, so I mean, so like that's the kind of issue with it, is that you can't really become the best, right? So it always keeps you in the state where you always have to constantly improve. You always have to sit there and you always have to improve your physique. You always have to improve like your gameplay. You always have to get better. And there never really is a point where it stops, because it can stop since it's an ever evolving thing.
Yeah, so that's what kind of confuses me is like I ask you like
Yeah.
what's the point of winning the game of life? You're like having a family and having kids and having friends. And then
Yeah.
But it sounds like the way you're living your day to day, which I'm not trying to criticize in any way, so please don't take it. I'm just trying to understand. It seems like that's not what you're thinking about, or how are those two things tied together?
So I guess the way that I see it is I view it as a thing where now that I'm in my early 20s and I have this like drive, this motivation, this passion, that I can use all of these attributes to really just like sacrifice in the short term and like just put my everything on my grinds and all these things so that one day I can come to a point where I feel like, okay, if I want to take time off to connect with my family or to maybe pursue something, then I'll be able to because I already went through that grind.
And what are you sacrificing in the short term?
Well, I mean, so for example, like my day-to-day life is I'll wake up, I'll shower, I'll work out, I'll stream for about 12 hours, I'll sit in my chair for a bit, and then I go to sleep. And the only thing that I really do is like I might respond to like friends, right, on messages because I always like respond to messages. But I mean, I'm living with my family. I don't really like hang out with them that much. I live in the same city as like my friends. Don't really like meet up with them that often. I don't really like do anything apart from, I guess, grind.
Okay. Thank you for explaining what your day to day is like. I'm still going to stick with the same question. What are you sacrificing?
I guess that's a good question because it's not really so much of a sacrifice as it is that you're prioritizing one thing over another, right? So I guess I wouldn't really say that I'm sacrificing anything because at the end of the day, you're just making a short term, not necessarily sacrifice, but a short term investment is what I guess I would call it. And then in the hopes that later on it pays off.
And what kind of payoff are you looking for?
Well, I'm just hoping that like one day I can sit there and be 30 and if I wanted to take off a few years, right, to like just spend time with like the family that I'll have, right, with my wife, kids, stuff like that, that I'll be able to. And I'll be in like, I guess, a secure enough position that anything like that would be a possibility.
Okay. Did you like being on a boat with your family for 2 years?
Yeah. I mean, it was cool because me and so that was like one of the times where I would always kind of use my imagination, right? Because since you don't really have other kids to play with, I'd play with my brother sometimes, but most of the time would just be spent like me making up these like make believe battles with my toys or stuff like that. Or there would be times where me and my brother would play on the GameCube, we'd play video games, stuff like that. Every night, us and our parents, we'd watch like shows on the little TV we had. So it was very like, it made our family very, I guess, tight knit and very close.
Is that something you want for the family that you're going to have one day?
Yeah.
And if you're 30 years old and you wanted to take a couple years off, what would you want to do?
Just be able to really sit there and I guess like appreciate the moment because like let's say when you do have kids, right? They're not going to be in that like young developmental state forever. So I guess being able to spend as much time with them while they're in that state and being able to I guess create as many memories as possible would be like a pretty good experience.
Okay. So it sounds like you're prioritizing.
Kita lanjut main Elden Ring guys. Satu mati aja dulu lagi. Baru kita udahan dan tidur. Gue ngerjain tugasnya besok aja. Maksud gue kayak hukumannya besok aja gitu. Boleh kan? Bolehin aja dong. Three. Yes. Ngantuk coba. sini. Ini sakit banget anjir.
Well, I took youth no matter to lay out your arm.
Ada baiknya kita tidur. Nah, terima kasih yang sudah singgah